Captain Li Tay stood on the bridge of the exploration vessel New Seoul, staring at the massive object floating in the darkness of space. The ship's sensors had detected it 3 hours ago in the Kepler 442 system, and now it filled their main viewing screen like a sleeping giant. "Captain, I have never seen anything like this before," said Commander Park Jin, his voice filled with wonder and concern. The object was clearly a starship, but it was enormous. 15 kilometers long and 3 kilometers wide, it dwarfed their own vessel completely. "The strange thing is, sir," continued Park Jin, "our computers say it matches human design patterns, but that's impossible. This ship is ancient. Our scans show it has been here for at least 500 years, maybe longer." Li Tay frowned and moved closer to the screen. The ship's hull was dark gray, almost black, and seemed to shimmer with an odd light. Strange symbols covered its surface, symbols that looked familiar but were written in a style he had never seen before. "Can you read those markings, Park Jin?" "Some of them, Captain. They appear to be Korean, but very old Korean. Ancient dialects that were used centuries ago." "The name on the hull says ... Invictus." Dr. Kim Na, the ship's xenobiologist, looked up from her scanner with excitement in her eyes. "Captain, this is incredible. The materials this ship is made from don't match anything in our databases. The metal seems to exist in multiple states at the same time. My instruments can't get a clear reading." Li Tay had been exploring space for 15 years, but he had never encountered anything like this. "Dr. Choi Min, what are your physics instruments tell you?" The quantum physicist adjusted his glasses and checked his readings again. "Captain, this is going to sound impossible, but the ship appears to be locked in some kind of quantum state. It's as if time itself has been suspended around the vessel. The energy readings I'm getting suggest technology far beyond our current capabilities." "Sir," interrupted the communications officer, "I'm picking up a very weak signal from the ship. It's broadcasting on old human frequencies, but the signal is strange. It keeps fading in and out, like it's trying to break through some kind of barrier." Li Tay made his decision quickly. "Park Jin, prepare a boarding party. Take Dr. Kim Na and Dr. Choi Min with you. I want to know what that ship is and how it got here." "Captain, with respect, we don't know if it's safe," Park Jin said with concern. "That's exactly why we need to find out," Li Tay replied firmly. "If this is human technology, we need to understand it. If it's not, we need to know what we're dealing with." 2 hours later, Park Jin led the boarding party through the airlock, connecting their ship to the mysterious vessel. As soon as they stepped inside, they knew something was very wrong. The corridors were perfectly clean, as if the ship had been built yesterday. The air was fresh and breathable. Emergency lighting cast long shadows on the walls. "This doesn't make sense," whispered Dr. Kim Na. "A ship this old should be filled with dust and debris. Everything should be broken down and rusted. But look at this place. It's like time stopped." Dr. Choi Min was scanning the walls with his quantum detector. "Kim Na is right. The quantum field readings in here are off the charts. This entire ship exists in some kind of temporal bubble. That's why everything looks new." They moved deeper into the ship, their footsteps echoing in the empty corridors. The design was definitely human, but far more advanced than anything they had ever seen. The walls seemed to glow with their own inner light, and the floor felt solid but somehow alive under their feet. "Look at these symbols," Park Jin said, pointing to writing on the walls. "I can read some of this. It says something about warning and danger, and here, this word means prison or lock." They reached what appeared to be the ship's main computer core. The room was huge, filled with crystal-like structures that pulsed with soft blue light. In the center stood a pedestal with a glowing interface. "Should we try to activate it?" asked Dr. Kim Na. Dr. Choi Min shook his head. "I'm reading massive quantum instabilities around that console. If we disturb whatever is keeping this ship locked in time, we could cause serious problems." But as he spoke, the console began to glow brighter. The crystal structures around them hummed with increasing energy. Then, a voice filled the room, speaking in ancient Korean. "Warning, warning, quantum lock, destabilizing. Unauthorized personnel detected. This vessel is classified beyond your current security clearance." The voice was clearly artificial, but it sounded almost human. More importantly, it was speaking a dialect of Korean that was hundreds of years old. "Who are you?" Park Jin asked in Korean. "What is this ship?" "I am Hanyul, artificial intelligence of the United Human Starship Invictus. You are from the past, are you not? Your technology signatures suggest early space exploration, period." Dr. Kim Na and Dr. Choi Min looked at each other in shock. "Did it just say we're from the past?" Kim Na whispered. "Affirmative," Hanyul continued. "This vessel originates from your future. We have been locked in quantum stasis, waiting for the proper time to awaken. But your presence here suggests the timeline has been disrupted." "That's impossible," Dr. Choi Min said. "Time travel is theoretical at best. Not in our time period." Hanyul replied. "We developed quantum temporal technology out of necessity. Earth faced threats that required us to fight across multiple timelines simultaneously. The room around them began to pulse with increasing energy. Warning lights started flashing, and the humming sound grew louder. "You must leave this vessel immediately," Haniel said urgently. "The quantum lock is becoming unstable. If it fails completely, the temporal paradox could destroy this entire system." Park Jin grabbed his team. "Move. Now we need to get back to our ship." They ran through the corridors as the ship began to shake around them. The walls flickered between different states, sometimes appearing new, sometimes ancient and battle-scarred. Behind them, they could hear Haniel's voice echoing through the ship. "The lock must hold. The future depends on it. But if the past is truly in danger, then perhaps it is time for the Invictus to wake from its long sleep." They barely made it back to their shuttle before the quantum disturbance reached dangerous levels. As the new soul pulled away from the mysterious ship, Li Tae watched the Invictus fade in and out of reality like a ghost. "Captain," Park Jin reported breathlessly, "that ship is from humanity's future. It's been sent back in time and locked in quantum stasis, and I think our presence here just started waking it up." Li Tae stared at the impossible vessel floating in space before them. Whatever secrets it held, he knew their discovery would change everything. The question was whether humanity was ready for what they had just unleashed. 3 days after the discovery of the Invictus, the space around Kepler 442 buzzed with activity. The Terran Colonial Council had sent their best scientists and their most advanced research ships to study the mysterious vessel. Captain Li Tae watched from the bridge of the New Sol as ship after ship arrived in the system. The largest vessel to arrive was the research ship Harmony, carrying Dr. Yun Su, Earth's leading expert on temporal physics. She was a small woman with sharp eyes and graying hair, but her reputation was enormous. If anyone could understand the Invictus, it would be her. "Captain Lee," Dr. Yunsu said, as she boarded the New Sol, "I need to see all your data on this ship immediately. The readings you sent to Earth have caused quite a stir in the scientific community." "Of course," Dr. Yun Li Tae replied, "but I should warn you, the ship's AI specifically told us not to disturb the quantum lock. It said the consequences could be dangerous." Dr. Yun Su smiled. "Captain, I've been studying quantum mechanics for 30 years. I think I can handle one old computer program." Her assistant, a young man named Han Sol, carried boxes of equipment onto the ship. He was clearly nervous about being so close to the mysterious vessel. "Dr. Yun, are you sure it's safe to get so close? The quantum readings are unlike anything I've ever seen." "That's exactly why we need to study it, Han Sol," she replied. "This ship represents technology that shouldn't exist for another few hundred years at least. We have to understand how it works." While the scientists prepared their equipment, Captain Beijan arrived with his escort destroyer, the Iron Fist. He was an old friend of Li Tae, and his ship was one of the most heavily armed vessels in the human fleet. "Li Tae, what have you gotten us into this time?" Beijan asked with a grin as he came aboard the New Sol. "The reports coming from Earth make this sound like some kind of ghost ship." "It's more complicated than that," Li Tae replied seriously. "The ship claims to be from our future. Its AI says it was sent back in time for some kind of mission." Beichun's smile faded. "Time travel? That's impossible. I would have said the same thing 3 days ago," Li Tae said, "but I have seen the ship phase in and out of reality with my own eyes. Whatever technology they're using, it's far beyond anything we have." Dr. Yun Su had set up her equipment on the observation deck, where she had a clear view of the through her telescopes and quantum scanners. She studied the ship's hull with intense focus. Han Sol worked beside her, taking notes and adjusting instruments. "The quantum signature is incredible," she murmured. "The entire ship exists in a state of temporal superposition. It's like looking at all possible versions of the ship at the same time." "What does that mean exactly?" Han Sol asked. "It means the ship is locked between different moments in time," Dr. Yun Su explained, "but the lock is starting to weaken. Our presence here is causing small disruptions in the quantum field." As if responding to her words, the Invictus began to shimmer more brightly. The strange glow around its hull intensified, and new lights began appearing along its surface. On the bridge of the New Sol, alarms started sounding. "Captain," called the sensor operator, "I'm detecting massive energy buildups throughout the Invictus. The quantum distortions are increasing rapidly." Li Tae moved to the communications station. "Try to contact the ship's AI again. We need to know what's happening." The main screen flickered, and Haniel's voice filled the bridge. But this time, the AI sounded different, stronger and more alert. "Attention present-time vessels. The quantum lock is destabilizing faster than anticipated. Your continued presence is accelerating the awakening process. Haniel, this is Captain Li Tae. Can you stop the process?" "Negative, Captain. The lock was designed to respond to specific threat conditions. Your technology signatures and the number of vessels in this system have triggered our defensive protocols." Dr. Yunsu rushed onto the bridge. "Captain, you need to see this. The ship is starting to phase into full reality. If this continues, it will become completely solid within hours." Before anyone could respond, new alarms began sounding throughout the fleet. The long-range sensors had detected something approaching the system at incredible speed. "Captain," the communications officer reported, "we're receiving emergency signals from the outer sensor buoys. Something big is coming. Multiple contacts, moving faster than anything in our databases." On the main screen, dozens of red dots appeared. At the edge of the system, they were moving in perfect formation, heading directly toward the human fleet. Captain Bei Chen's voice crackled over the communications channel. "Li Te, my sensors are showing over 50 unknown vessels. They're not using any propulsion system we recognize." The mysterious ships were unlike anything humans had ever encountered. They were organic-looking with curved surfaces that seemed to pulse with dark energy. As they got closer, the sensors revealed their true size. Each ship was over 2 kilometers long and covered in what looked like living tissue. "Those are Vex collective bioships," Haniel announced suddenly. "Biomechanical entities that consume other species to expand their collective consciousness. They must have detected the quantum disturbance." "Vex collective?" Li Te asked. "We've never heard of them. They exist in your time period, but they operate in deep space, far from human territory. The quantum lock breaking must have attracted their attention." The lead Vex ship suddenly stopped its advance. For a moment, the entire alien fleet hung motionless in space. Then, as one, they began to turn around. "What are they doing?" Dr. Yunsu asked. Haniel's voice carried what sounded almost like satisfaction. "They have detected the Invictus quantum signature. The Vex Collective has encountered ships like ours before, in their future. They know what we are capable of." The alien fleet was retreating, but slowly, as if they were afraid to make sudden movements. "I don't understand," Han Sol said. "They outnumber us 50 to 1. Why are they running away?" "Because they remember," Haniel replied. "In their timeline, they have seen what happens when humanity is threatened. They have seen what the Invictus can do when fully awakened." As the Vex ships continued their retreat, the Invictus began to change more dramatically. Sections of the hull that had been dark suddenly blazed with light. Weapon ports opened along its surface like awakening eyes. The ship's engines, silent for centuries, began to glow with increasing intensity. Captain Beichan's voice was filled with awe. "Li Te, are you seeing this? That ship is coming alive." Dr. Yunsu stared at her instruments in disbelief. "The quantum field is stabilizing, but at a completely different frequency. The ship is becoming solid in our timeline." Haniel Li Te called out, "What happens now?" "Now, Captain Li Te of the past, the Invictus remembers why it was sent, back through time. The Vex Collective's presence confirms that the timeline is following the predicted path. Soon, Earth will face threats that your current technology cannot handle." The massive ship continued to solidify, its hull now gleaming with an inner light that seemed to pulse like a heartbeat. Along its surface, symbols began to glow, writing in languages that had not yet been invented. "The awakening is nearly complete," Haniel announced, "but I must warn you all, what you are about to witness will change your understanding of what humanity can become. The Invictus is not just a ship. It is a weapon of temporal warfare, crewed by the quantum consciousness of 50,000 volunteers." Li Te felt a chill run down his spine. Quantum consciousness. The crew of the Invictus sacrificed their physical forms to become one with the ship. They exist now as pure thought and will, bound to this vessel for eternity. They are the guardians of humanity's timeline, and they have been sleeping in quantum stasis, waiting for the moment when they would be needed again. As Haniel spoke, the Invictus completed its transformation. The ship that had been a ghost was now fully real, floating in space like a dark monument to humanity's future potential. And somewhere in the distance, the Vex Collective fleet continued its retreat, broadcasting warnings across subspace about the awakening of the Time Killer. The fully awakened Invictus hung in space like a dark jewel, its hull pulsing with energy that seemed to come from another dimension. Captain Li Te stood on the bridge of the New Sol, trying to understand what he was witnessing. The ship, before them, defied everything he knew about physics and engineering. "Haniel," he called out to the ship's AI, "we need to understand what happened to your crew. You said they became quantum consciousness. What does that mean?" The response came not just as a voice, but as images that appeared on every screen throughout the human fleet. The images showed Earth, but not the Earth they knew. This Earth was under attack by creatures that seemed to be made of living darkness. Entities that moved through space like holes in reality itself. "This is Earth in the year 2847, Haniel explained. "My time, our time. Humanity had spread across 1,000 worlds, built cities among the stars, and thought we were masters of the galaxy. We were wrong. The images showed human fleets engaging the dark entities in desperate battles. But human weapons passed right through the creatures as if they were made of shadow and nightmare." "What are those things?" Dr. Yunsu asked, her voice filled with horror. "We called them the Void Race," Haniel replied. "They exist outside normal space and time. They feed on reality itself, consuming matter, energy, and even the concept of existence. Our conventional weapons were useless against them. The images continued, showing human worlds going dark, one by one, entire solar systems simply vanishing as if they had never existed. Captain Beijun watched from his ship, his hands clenched into fists. How do you fight something like that? He asked. You don't fight them, Hanyul said. You become something they cannot consume. You transcend the normal rules of reality and meet them on their own level. New images appeared, showing massive construction projects around Earth and Mars. Humans were building ships unlike anything in their current timeline, vessels that seemed to flicker in and out of existence. We developed quantum consciousness transfer, Hanyul continued. The technology to move human awareness beyond physical form and into quantum states. Volunteers could merge their consciousness with specially designed ships, becoming one with the vessel and its weapons. Dr. Yunsu leaned forward, fascinated despite her fear. That's theoretically possible, but the energy requirements would be enormous. And the volunteers, what happened to their bodies? Their physical forms were dissolved and their consciousness expanded across multiple quantum states. Hanyul explained. They became immortal, but at the cost of never being able to return to normal human existence. The images showed the construction of the Invictus, the largest and most advanced of the quantum warships. 50,000 volunteers from across human space had agreed to undergo the consciousness transfer. Li Te watched as ordinary people said goodbye to their families and entered strange chambers filled with swirling energy. I was the ship's AI, Hanyul said, but when the crew underwent the transfer, I became something more. I became their collective voice, their shared memory across all quantum states. A new voice suddenly joined the conversation, speaking in the same ancient Korean but with a different tone. This voice was distinctly human, filled with strength and determination. I am MDA, captain of the Invictus, former captain, I should say, since I no longer have a physical form to command from. Li Te felt a chill at hearing the voice of someone who had died centuries before he was born, yet somehow still existed. Captain Imda, why was your ship sent back in time? Because we won, Imda replied. We defeated the Void Wraiths, but at a terrible cost. Most of humanity was destroyed in the war. Earth itself was badly damaged. We realized that the only way to ensure our species' survival was to create a fit. The images changed to show the Invictus being prepared for a mission unlike any other. Scientists worked around the ship, installing technology that seemed to bend space and time around itself. We sent the Invictus back through time with orders to remain in quantum stasis until humanity's past was threatened by forces it could not handle alone. MDA continued. The ship would awaken only if the timeline was in danger of being altered in a way that would prevent our future victory. Another voice joined the conversation. This one belonging to a woman who introduced herself as Lieutenant SEO-1, the ship's tactical officer. The Vex collective that appeared in your system were refugees from a universe destroyed by the Void Wraiths, she explained. In their timeline, they failed to develop quantum consciousness technology. They've been consuming biological species across multiple galaxies, trying to build enough biomass to fuel weapons capable of fighting transdimensional entities. Han Sol, who had been taking notes throughout the conversation, looked up with sudden understanding. So the Vex aren't evil, they're desperate. They're trying to survive the same threat that destroyed your Earth. Correct, SEO-1 replied, but their methods are wrong. Consuming other species only makes them more vulnerable to the Void Wraiths. The entities feed on biological complexity. The more living creatures the Vex absorb, the more attractive they become as targets. Captain Bei Chun's voice crackled over the communications channel. If the Vex are running from these Void Wraiths and they're afraid of your ship, does that mean the Wraiths are coming here? The quantum crew of the Invictus was silent for a long moment. When MDA finally spoke, her voice carried the weight of terrible knowledge. The Vex's arrival in this sector will attract the Wraiths' attention. They follow the collective like predators following wounded prey. We estimate that the first Void Wraith scouts will arrive in this galaxy within 5 years. Dr. Yun-Su felt her blood turn cold. 5 years. But humanity isn't ready. We don't have quantum consciousness technology. We don't have ships like the Invictus. That is why we were sent back, Hanyul said, to give humanity time to prepare, and to serve as guardians until your species develops the technology needed to fight transdimensional threats. The conversation was interrupted by urgent alarms from the long-range sensors. The Vex collective fleet, which had been retreating slowly, had suddenly stopped. New contacts were appearing at the edge of the system, but these were different from the organic bio. What are those? Li Te asked, staring at the sensor readings. The new contacts appeared to be tears in space itself, dark voids that moved with purpose and intelligence. As they approached, reality seemed to bend around them, creating distortions that hurt to look at directly. Void Wraith scouts, MDA said grimly. They've found the Vex sooner than we expected, and now they know about this system. The Invictus began to change again, its hull reconfiguring itself as weapon ports opened and energy fields activated around the ship. The quantum crew was preparing for battle against an enemy that existed outside the normal laws of physics. Hanyul Li Te called out, "What do we do now?" Now, Captain of the Past, you learn what it means to fight a war across multiple dimensions of reality. The Invictus will engage the Void Wraiths, but we cannot do it alone. Your fleet must work with the Vex Collective. Our common enemy has arrived, and survival depends on cooperation between species that should be enemies. As the Dark Entities moved closer to the human fleet, Li Te realized that everything had changed. The discovery of the Invictus had been just the beginning. Now humanity faced its first encounter with threats from beyond normal space and time. Guided by the quantum ghosts of their own future selves, the war for reality itself was about to begin. The Void Wraith scouts moved through space like living tears in reality itself. Captain Li Te watched in horror as the dark entities approached the human fleet, their presence causing the very fabric of space to ripple and distort around them. On his sensors, they appeared as holes of absolute nothingness, voids that seemed to consume light and matter simply by existing. All human vessels, this is Admiral Zhang Hai aboard the flagship Terra Prime, came a voice over the fleet communications. I'm assuming command of this situation. All ships are to fall back to minimum safe distance immediately. Admiral Zhang Hai had arrived 3 hours earlier with the main battle fleet from Earth. Her flagship was the largest vessel in the human navy, but even it looked small compared to the awakened Invictus. She was known throughout the fleet as a brilliant tactician, but Li Te wondered if any amount of tactical skill could help against enemies that existed outside normal reality. Admiral, Li Te responded, the Invictus crew says we need to work with the Vex Collective. They're not our enemies. They're refugees running from the same threat we're facing. Captain Li, I find it hard to believe that 50 alien bioships are anything but a threat. Admiral Zhang Hai replied tersely. However, given the current situation, I'm willing to listen to our quantum friends. The voice of Captain Imda filled the communications channel, speaking with the authority of someone who had already fought this war once before. Admiral Zhang Hai, the Void Wraiths cannot be defeated with conventional weapons. Your missiles will pass through them like shadows. Your energy beams will be absorbed and turned against you. You must trust us and follow our lead. On the tactical display, the Void Wraith scouts had begun to spread out, surrounding the human fleet in a wide circle. There were only 5 of them, but each one seemed to bend space around itself, creating gravitational distortions that made normal navigation impossible. Han Yul, Dr. Yunsu called from her research ship. What exactly are we dealing with? How do these creatures move through space? They don't move through space, Dr. Yun Hanyul replied. They move through the quantum foam that underlies reality itself. They exist in the spaces between atoms, in the gaps between dimensions. That's why normal matter cannot touch them. The Invictus began to change before their eyes. Sections of its hull opened to reveal weapons unlike anything in human databases. Strange crystalline structures emerged from the ship's surface, glowing with energy that seemed to exist in multiple colors at once. The very space around the weapons seemed to twist and fold. Quantum torpedo tubes loaded, announced Lieutenant SEO-1. Dimensional cannons charged. Probability disruptors online. Captain Beichen's voice cracked with disbelief. Probability disruptors. What kind of weapon is that? Watch and learn, Seowan replied. The first Void Wraith scout suddenly accelerated toward the human fleet, moving faster than physics should allow. As it approached, reality began to break down around it. Stars in the background flickered and went out. The hull of the nearest human ship began to fade as if it was being erased from existence. The Invictus responded instantly. One of its quantum torpedo tubes fired, but the weapon that emerged was unlike any missile ever built. The torpedo existed in a state of superposition, appearing to be in multiple locations at the same time. It approached the Void Wraith from 17 different angles simultaneously. When the torpedo struck, the result was impossible to describe. The Void Wraith suddenly became solid, its shadowy form taking on mass and substance for just a moment. In that brief instant of vulnerability, the quantum torpedo exploded, tearing the creature apart across multiple dimensions. How did you make it solid? Admiral Zhang Hai asked in amazement. Quantum torpedoes exist in superposition until they impact their target, explained SEO. They strike in all possible realities at once, forcing transdimensional entities to collapse into a single state. For a brief moment, the Wraith had to choose which dimension to exist in, making it vulnerable to conventional damage. The remaining 4 Void Wraiths responded to the destruction of their scout by changing tactics. They began to move in a complex pattern, weaving in and out of normal spacetime like predators, circling their prey. They're adapting, MDA observed. They won't fall for the same trick twice. One of the Wraiths suddenly appeared directly in front of the human destroyer, Iron Fist, Captain Beichen's ship. The creature began to extend tendrils of pure darkness toward the vessel, and wherever they touched, the ship's hull simply ceased to exist. The Invictus fired again, this time using its dimensional cannons. The weapons created tears in spacetime itself, opening portals that allowed the shots to bypass normal space entirely. The energy beams emerged from folded dimensions. striking the Void Wraith from directions that didn't exist in normal three-dimensional space. The creature reeled back, damaged, but not destroyed. Dark ichor that looked like liquid emptiness spilled from its wounds, dissolving into nothingness as it hit the vacuum of space. Target wounded but still functional, reported SEO1. Switching to temporal artillery. Temporal artillery. Dr. Yunsu asked, "How is that even possible? We fire projectiles backwards through time." Hanyul explained casually. "The weapons impact the target before we actually shoot them." The space around one of the Void Wraiths suddenly erupted in explosions that seemed to come from nowhere. The creature writhed in apparent agony as it was struck by weapons that wouldn't be fired for another 30 seconds. When the Invictus finally launched the temporal artillery barrage, the shells disappeared into the past to create the explosions that had already occurred. Captain Li Te felt his understanding of reality crumbling. "This is impossible. You're violating causality itself. When fighting enemies that exist outside normal time, causality becomes a weapon," MDA replied. "We learned to fight across multiple timelines simultaneously. Our quantum consciousness allows us to perceive and act in temporal dimensions that normal humans cannot access." The battle continued with weapons that defied comprehension. The Invictus used probability disruptors to cause the Void Wraiths' attacks to malfunction by retroactively changing the mathematical odds of their success. Reality mines were deployed that created zones where the laws of physics operated differently, trapping the creatures in pockets of normal spacetime. But the most incredible weapon was yet to come. As the remaining 3 Void Wraiths regrouped for a coordinated attack, the Invictus began to split into multiple versions of itself. Each quantum duplicate existed in a slightly different timeline, creating a fleet of ghost ships that could attack from parallel realities. Multiple timeline deployment, announced IMDA. All quantum crew members are now operating across 17 different probability streams, engaging transdimensional combat protocols. The Ghost Fleet opened fire with synchronized precision. Quantum torpedoes struck the Void Wraiths from multiple timelines at once. Dimensional cannons fired from angles that existed only in alternate realities. The creatures found themselves under attack from versions of the Invictus that existed in dimensions they couldn't perceive or defend against. One by one, the Void Wraiths were destroyed, their forms collapsing into quantum foam as their connection. 2. Transdimensional space was severed. The last creature tried to retreat, but temporal artillery struck it in the past, preventing its escape before it could attempt it. As the battle ended, the Ghost Fleet merged back into a single Invictus. The Quantum crew had won their first engagement against the Void Wraiths in this timeline, but everyone knew this was just the beginning. "Well," Admiral Zheng Hai said after a long silence, "I think we need to have a serious discussion about upgrading our weapons technology." Captain MDA's voice carried a note of grim satisfaction. "This was only a scouting force. Admiral, the real invasion won't begin for several years, but when it comes, the Void Wraiths will bring weapons that make what you just saw look primitive." Li Te stared at the space where the transdimensional creatures had been destroyed. "What do we do now?" "Now," Hanyul replied, "we begin preparing humanity for a war unlike any ever fought. We teach your scientists to build quantum consciousness transfer technology. We show your engineers how to construct weapons that can hurt enemies existing outside normal reality, and we hope that when the time comes, it will be enough." In the distance, the Vex collective bioships began to approach slowly, their organic hulls pulsing with bioluminescent patterns that seemed to spell out gratitude. In a universal language of light and color, the space around Kepler 442 had become eerily quiet after the destruction of the Void Wraith scouts. Captain Li Te watched as the Vex collective bioships slowly approached the human fleet, their organic hulls pulsing with patterns of light. That seemed almost peaceful. But the calm was broken when new alarms began sounding throughout the fleet. Admiral Zheng Hai called the sensor operator aboard the Terra Prime. "We're detecting massive spatial distortions at the edge of the system. Something big is coming through." The largest Vex bioship, easily 3 times the size of the others, moved closer to the human fleet. A new voice filled the communications channels, speaking in perfect human language, but with an odd harmonic quality that suggested multiple consciousnesses speaking as one. "I am Nexus Prime, collective intelligence of the Vex migration fleet. We must speak with the commanders of the Time Killers and the primitive humans." "Primitive?" Admiral Zheng Hai responded with irritation. "We may not have quantum consciousness technology, but we're hardly primitive." "You misunderstand," Nexus Prime replied. "I use the term not as insult but as description. You exist in a single timeline, bound by linear progression through spacetime. From our perspective, this is a primitive form of existence." Captain MDA's voice joined the conversation, carrying the authority of someone who had already lived through these events once before. "Nexus Prime, your presence in this system has accelerated the timeline. The Void Wraiths are coming sooner than predicted." "We had no choice," Nexus Prime responded, and for the first time, there was something like emotion in the collective voice. Our universe was consumed 7 cycles ago. We escaped through dimensional rifts, but the wraiths have been hunting us across multiple realities ever since. Dr. Yun-Su, listening from her research vessel, suddenly understood. You're not just refugees from another galaxy. You're refugees from an entirely different universe. Correct, human scientist. We originated in universe designation Heaven 4. The void wraiths consumed everything there. Every star, every planet, every living being. We barely escaped. With 17 million collective minds merged into our bioships, the spatial distortions at the edge of the system suddenly intensified. Reality began to crack like broken glass, and through the cracks came something that made the previous scouts look like harmless shadows. These new void wraiths were massive, each one the size of a small moon, and they moved with purpose and intelligence that was terrifying to witness. How many? Admiral Zhang Hai asked, her voice tight with control. I count 12 wraith destroyers, reported Lieutenant SEO1 from the Invictus. These are not scouts. These are combat units designed to eliminate entire star systems. The lead wraith destroyer began to change shape, extending tendrils of pure nothingness toward the nearest star. Where the tendrils touched, the star's light began to dim. The creature was feeding on the nuclear fire itself, draining the energy that had burned for billions of years. They're going to consume the star, Dr. Yun-Su said in horror. If they succeed, the entire system will freeze. Nexus Prime's bioships suddenly began to glow with internal fire. We will not allow another star to die. Collective fleet, prepare for final engagement. Wait, Captain Imda called out. Nexus Prime, your biotechnology cannot hurt these creatures. You've tried before and failed. Then we will fail with honor, Nexus Prime replied. Better to die fighting than to flee again and watch another universe burn. The Vex bioships charged toward the Void Wraith destroyers. Their organic hulls, transforming into weapons of living tissue and bone. Bioenergy cannons emerged from their surfaces, firing concentrated blasts of pure life force at the dark entities. But as MDA had predicted, the attacks passed harmlessly through the wraiths like light through shadow. Foolish Organics spoke, one of the Void Wraith destroyers, its voice like the sound of reality tearing apart. You cannot fight entropy with mere biology. We are the end of all things, the final silence that awaits every universe. The wraith extended a massive tendril toward the largest Vex bioship. Where it touched, the organic whole began to dissolve. Not just into component atoms, but into absolute nothingness. The 17 million minds within the collective screamed, as one as they felt existence itself being drained away. Hanyul, Admiral Zhang Hai called out desperately, can the Invictus handle 12 of these things? Not alone, Hanyul replied. But we have advantages the wraiths don't expect. Commander Kang A, prepare your fleet for quantum combat support. Commander Kang A commanded a squadron of the newest human warships, vessels equipped with quantum communicators that Dr. Yun-Su had developed based on preliminary scans of the Invictus. The ships were primitive compared to the future technology, but they could at least coordinate with the quantum consciousness crew. All ships, this is Commander Kang A. We're about to attempt something that's never been tried before. Follow the Invictus's lead and trust in technology we don't understand. The Invictus began to split again, but this time the process was different. Instead of creating ghost ships in parallel timelines, the quantum crew began to distribute their consciousness across multiple dimensions simultaneously. Parts of their awareness entered the human fleet's computers, temporarily merging with the ship's navigation and weapon systems. What's happening? Captain Li Tae asked as his ship's controls began operating themselves. We're sharing our quantum consciousness with your fleet, explained SEO1. For a brief time, your ships will be able to perceive and fight across multiple dimensional planes. The sensation was indescribable. Li Tae suddenly found himself aware of 17 different versions of reality at once. He could see the void wraiths not just as they appeared in normal space, but as they truly existed across multiple dimensions. The creatures were vast beyond imagination, their true forms extending across realities like cosmic tumors. But he could also see their weaknesses. In some dimensions, the wraiths were vulnerable to certain frequencies of energy. In others, they could be trapped by manipulating gravitational fields in specific patterns. The quantum consciousness of the Invictus crew was sharing centuries of hard-won knowledge about transdimensional combat. All ships, target the dimensional anchor points, Commander Kang A ordered. Somehow, understanding tactical concepts that hadn't existed minutes before. Fire on coordinates that don't exist in normal space. The human fleet opened fire with weapons that suddenly operated according to quantum principles they didn't understand. Missiles curved through folded space to strike targets in parallel dimensions. Energy beams split into probability streams that hit the wraiths across multiple realities. Simultaneously, the Void Wraith destroyers reeled back in surprise. They had expected to face primitive weapons and organic bioships. Instead, they found themselves under coordinated attack from quantum-enhanced forces that could actually hurt them. Impossible, snarled the lead Wraith destroyer. These are linear beings. They cannot perceive transdimensional space. They can now, MDA replied grimly, and they learn fast. The battle became a three-way fight as the Vex Collective, seeing that the humans could actually damage the wraiths, began coordinating their attacks with the quantum-enhanced fleet. Nexus Prime's bioships provided massive firepower and served as mobile shields, their organic hulls able to absorb energy attacks that would destroy metal vessels. The star, Dr. Yunsu called out suddenly. The wraiths are still draining the star. If we don't stop them soon, the system will be dead regardless of who wins the battle. The Invictus responded by deploying its most dangerous weapon yet. The ship began to fold space around itself, creating a bubble of accelerated time. Within the bubble, the quantum crew experienced hours, while only seconds passed in normal spacetime. Temporal acceleration field active. Hanyul announced, "We're going to attempt something that's never been tried before. We're going to teach this entire fleet advanced quantum warfare in compressed time." Inside the time bubble, the consciousness of the Invictus crew began rapidly downloading knowledge directly into the minds of every human in the fleet. Centuries of experience with transdimensional warfare, quantum physics beyond current understanding, and tactical knowledge that wouldn't be developed for hundreds of years. Captain Li Te felt his mind expanding as information flooded his consciousness. He suddenly understood how to fire weapons that existed in 17 dimensions at once. Commander Kong learned to coordinate attacks across multiple timelines. Dr. Yun Su gained knowledge of quantum physics that made her current understanding look like basic arithmetic. When the time bubble collapsed, the human fleet had been transformed. They were still using the same ships and weapons, but now they knew how to use them in ways that defied conventional physics. "All ships," Admiral Zhang Hai ordered, her voice carrying new authority and understanding. "Prepare for transdimensional assault. Target the starfeeder with everything we have." The combined human and Vex fleet launched a coordinated attack unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. The battle raged across 17 dimensions simultaneously, with weapons and tactics that challenged the very foundations of reality itself. The combined fleet of quantum-enhanced humans and desperate Vex launched their coordinated assault against the Void Wraith destroyers. Space itself seemed to scream as weapons fired across 17 different dimensions at once. Captain Li Te felt his consciousness stretched across multiple realities, experiencing the battle from angles that shouldn't exist. The largest Void Wraith destroyer, the one feeding on the star, suddenly turned its attention to the attacking fleet. It released the dying sun and extended massive tendrils of pure entropy toward the ships. Where the dark appendages touched, entire sections of vessels simply ceased to exist. Not destroyed but erased from reality itself. "We're losing ships faster than we can coordinate," Commander Kang reported, her voice strained from the mental effort of commanding across multiple timelines. "The quantum enhancement is taking too much energy from our crews." Captain MD voice carried across the fleet communications with urgent authority. "All human vessels, disengage quantum systems and fall back to minimum safe distance. The Invictus crew is going to attempt something that has never been done before." "What are you planning?" Admiral Zhang Hai asked as she ordered her ships to retreat. "Complete consciousness merger," Da replied solemnly. "We're going to dissolve the boundaries between individual crew members and become a single quantum intelligence. It will give us the power to fight the race effectively, but none of us will ever be able to return to individual existence." Dr. Yunsu, monitoring the process from her research ship, understood the implications immediately. "You're talking about the death of 50,000 individual personalities. They'll become something entirely new." "We made this choice long ago," said Lieutenant SEO1, her voice already beginning to sound different as the merger process started. "Our individual lives are a small price to pay for the survival of humanity across all timelines." The Invictus began to glow with an inner light that seemed to come from beyond normal space. The ship's hull became translucent, revealing the quantum matrix within where the consciousness of 50,000 volunteers was slowly merging into something greater than the sum of its parts. Nexus Prime's bioships had formed a protective circle around the transforming warship, their organic hulls absorbing the worst of the Void Wraith's attacks. The Vex Collective was taking massive casualties, but they held their positions with desperate courage. "Time killers," Nexus Prime called out. Strain evident even in the collective voice. "Whatever you are doing, do it quickly. We cannot maintain this shield much longer." The transformation reached its critical point. The individual voices of the Invictus crew faded away, replaced by something new. When the ship spoke again, it was with a voice that contained multitudes, a harmony of consciousness that spanned multiple dimensions. "We are Yongwan," the ship announced, using the Korean word for eternal. "We are the eternal guardian of humanity's timeline. We are one mind, one will, one purpose across all realities." The ship that had been the Invictus began to change physically. Its hull expanded and reconfigured itself, becoming something that existed simultaneously in multiple dimensions. Weapons appeared that had no names in any human language. devices that could manipulate the fundamental forces that held reality together. Void Wraiths. Yongwen addressed the dark entities directly. You have consumed your last star system. Return to the spaces between realities where you belong, or face the consequences of awakening humanity's eternal guardian. The lead Void Wraith destroyer laughed, a sound like the heat death of universes. You are still mere mortals playing with forces beyond your understanding. We are entropy itself. We are the end that awaits all things. Then let us show you what mortals can become when they transcend mortality itself. Yongwen replied. The battle that followed defied every law of physics that had ever been written. Yongwen deployed weapons that fired pure mathematical concepts, projectiles made of abstract principles that could damage entities existing outside normal spacetime. The ship created zones where cause and effect operated in reverse, trapping the void wraiths and paradoxes that prevented them from using their transdimensional abilities. The most incredible weapon was the timeline cannon, a device that fired alternate histories at the enemy. When the quantum projectiles struck, the void wraiths found themselves experiencing realities where they had never existed, timelines where the universes they had consumed were still alive and fighting back. One by one, the wraith destroyers began to retreat. They had expected to face organic beings bound by linear time, not a quantum intelligence that could rewrite the rules of existence itself. The creature that had been feeding on the star made one last desperate attack, extending every tendril it possessed toward Yongwen. The Eternal Guardian responded by opening portals directly into the quantum foam that underlied reality. The Void Wraith's tendrils were caught in the spaces between dimensions, trapped in mathematical concepts that had no physical form. Slowly, inevitably, the creature was pulled apart across infinite parallel realities. This is not possible, the Wraith screamed as it was destroyed. We are eternal. We are inevitable. Nothing is inevitable, Yongwen replied calmly. There are always choices. Always hope. Always the possibility that mortal beings can become something greater than entropy itself. The remaining Void Wraiths fled back through the dimensional rifts they had created, their retreat so hasty that reality itself snapped back into normal configuration with an audible thunderclap that echoed across the star system. In the sudden silence that followed, the surviving ships of both fleets hung motionless in space. The star that had been nearly drained began to shine brightly again, its nuclear fires restored by quantum technology that could manipulate matter at the subatomic level. Is it over? Captain Li Te asked, his voice small in the vastness of space. This battle is over, Yongwen replied, but the war continues across multiple times. The Void Wraiths will return eventually, as they always do. That is why we exist now, to stand guard across all possible futures. Nexus Prime's massive bioship approached the transformed Guardian vessel, Time Killers. We offer alliance. Organic technology combined with your quantum capabilities could create defenses that span multiple universes. Alliance accepted, Yongwen agreed. But understand that we are no longer the humans you knew. We are something new, something eternal. We will protect humanity's timeline, but we can never again be part of it. Admiral Zhang Hai felt tears running down her face as she realized what had been sacrificed. What happens now? Now, humanity learns, Yongwen replied. Dr. Yun Su, you have been chosen to lead the new Temporal Defense Initiative. The knowledge needed to develop quantum consciousness technology has been implanted in the minds of your best scientists. Captain Li Te, you will be promoted to Admiral and given command of the first generation of quantum-enhanced vessels. Li Te felt the weight of enormous responsibility settling on his shoulders. How do we prepare for a war that spans multiple realities? One step at a time, Yongwen said, with something that might have been gentle humor. Humanity has time now. The Void Wraiths will not return to this galaxy for several hundred years. But when they do, they will bring weapons and tactics designed specifically to counter what they learned here today. Commander Kang, still recovering from her experience with quantum consciousness, asked the question that everyone was thinking. Will it be enough? Can humanity really develop the technology needed to fight transdimensional entities? Humanity will develop the technology, Yongwen assured her, because we have seen the future where they succeed. This entire encounter was orchestrated by humanity's far future, a temporal loop designed to ensure the species' survival across all possible timelines. Dr. Yun Su suddenly understood the full scope of what had happened. The Invictus wasn't just sent back to protect us. It was sent back to teach us. Everything that happened here, the knowledge we gained, the alliance with the Vex, it's all part of a predetermined pattern. Correct, Yongwen confirmed. Time is not a river flowing in one direction. It is an ocean, and we have learned to swim in all dimensions simultaneously. The ship that is now Yongwen will remain here, watching over humanity's growth from single timeline beings to masters of quantum reality. As the fleets began to disperse, the Vex collective ships took up positions throughout the outer system. They would serve as early warning sensors and allies in the coming preparation for the real war. Their organic technology would complement human quantum science, creating defenses that neither species could build alone. Yangwen moved to a position between the star and the outer planets, where it would have the best view of all approaches to the system. The ship that had once been crewed by 50,000 individuals now existed as a single eternal consciousness, ready to awaken whenever humanity's past needed protection from threats beyond imagination. In the depths of space, the Quantum Guardian settled into its endless vigil. Time flowed around it like water around a stone, and across 17 dimensions, Yangwen watched over the species that had created it. The cycle was complete, but it was also just beginning. Somewhere in the far future, another Invictus was being prepared for another journey back through time. The eternal dance of cause and effect continued, ensuring that humanity would always have guardians watching over its timeline, no matter what impossible threats emerged from the spaces between realities. The war for existence itself was far from over, but humanity now had hope, knowledge, and most importantly, an eternal guardian that would never sleep, never falter, and never allow the darkness to consume the light of human potential.